everybody. Welcome back to the Fretboard Journal Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Verlindy. It has been a while. As a few of you know, I was in Peru for an entire month. I recorded a few episodes before I went on that trip. Sophia Wolfson recorded a couple more, and now I am speaking to you in near real time with a great interview I just did with mandolin wizard Jacob Jolliff. If you've been to a bluegrass festival, you've probably seen Jacob. He's played with Joy Kill Sorrow. He's played with Yonder Mountain String Band, Bela Fleck. He's got his own band. I saw him play with Michael Daves here at Wintergrass. He absolutely blew me away, and I figured it was time to get him on the Fretboard Journal Podcast. We haven't talked mandolin for a while, so here we go. While I was away in Peru, I just want to let everybody know our 56th issue started mailing to everybody. Hopefully you got it. If you haven't yet, you can still subscribe to the magazine and get our new 56th issue. It is stunning. And I just want to thank all of you for supporting the podcast and tuning in and getting the magazine, as well as Sophia over in New York and Mike here in Seattle for holding down the fort while I was away. We have a couple of enormous announcements regarding our 2025 Fretboard Summit, one of which I cannot tell you all until like a month before the summit actually takes place, which is driving me absolutely nuts. But let me just tell you, we've got our lineup of builders on the fretboardsummit.org website right now. We have an incredible array of daytime programming and evening programming, and if anybody is wondering, if anybody's like looked at the former lineups for the summit, this year is going to be even better. And I just hope I'll see some of you in Chicago at the Old Town School of Folk Music. The dates for 2025 summit are August 21st to 23rd. And it is a guitar gathering, a guitar party, a family reunion like no other. And included are, I don't know, a dozen personalities that you've heard on this very podcast. They'll all be there teaching, there to meet you, there to play music. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Before I get to my conversation with Jacob, our podcast is sponsored by Mike and Mike's Guitar Bar here in Seattle, Washington. One of the coolest guitar stores I've ever stepped foot in, and you can step foot in there or go to mmguitarbar.com to see their entire inventory of acoustic guitars, electric guitars, synths, pedals, you name it. They go through inventory very quickly, so you want to hit reload. You want to follow them on Instagram as well. We're also brought to you by our friends at Peghead Nation, one of the best places in the world to learn mandolin. Our buddy John Reichman is teaching mandolin for Peghead Nation. You can get your first month free or $20 off any annual subscription with the discount code FRETBOARD when you check out. Stringjoy Strings also sponsoring the show once again. And again, mandolin strings now are in their inventory, as well as banjo strings and, of course, acoustic and electric guitar strings. They can also do custom sets and all points in between. Tell them the Fretboard Journal sent you. There's also a one-time discount code you can use on stringjoy.com for your first purchase. It's just the discount code FRETBOARD. With all of that out of the way, here is my conversation with mandolin wizard Jacob Jolliff. I hope you enjoy it. Please, please, please keep the feedback coming and share the show with your friends. Jacob, we finally did it. Thanks for being on the podcast.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's good to be here.
I saw you at Wintergrass. You graciously, amongst the many mandolins that you played at our vintage instrument thing, you played my Stradolin and made it sound better than it's ever sounded before. So thank you for that.
Oh, well, I don't know if that's true, but I had a good time playing it, and all the other amazing axes that were tossed into our hands there for one or two songs at a time. Yeah,
totally. So
yeah.
let's go back. Like, I know you're in New York now, but where did you grow up?
I grew up just south of Portland, Oregon, in a town called Newburgh. I don't know if you've ever been through there.
I've driven through there. Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes if you've driven to like the coast from Portland, then you might go through Newburgh. There's a university there where my dad teaches, or he just retired. But so I grew up kind of in that Oregon bluegrass scene and Northwest bluegrass scene, going to Wintergrass and playing all the other little festivals. And yeah, I loved it.
And was mandolin your first instrument?
It was, yeah. My dad, who's a multi-instrumentalist, but mostly a banjo picker, he started me out on the mandolin when I was 7. And me and my siblings, he started us all on instruments kind of as part of our homeschooling, with the option of quitting after a couple years, which I did not take that option, obviously. But when I first started, I didn't necessarily love it. I did just the required 10 minutes a day of practice.
Okay.
Um, and I hated it all 10 minutes. But then for some reason, after about 6 months, as legend has it, because I can't really remember because I was pretty young, but I went from doing the required 10 minutes to multiple hours a day, just kind of overnight, is what my parents say. And I don't really know why. I think I just, even at 10 minutes a day, I had made some progress because when you're a kid, you learn fast, and it just started to feel like something I could do. And it switched over to a few hours every day at the very least, and then it never really switched back. And now I'm 36, so it's been almost 30 years.
Yeah, I was going to ask. So
Yeah.
you're not that old. So like what, or at least to me. And so at that point in time, your kid playing mandolin for 10 minutes a day, that's like the family rule. Is that
Yeah.
tab in front of you? Are you watching DVDs? Is it just loose? Like he didn't care what you were doing?
Um, you know, uh, Tab was a part of how I started. My dad would, he definitely had his sights on, family band slash someone to play with, someone to gig with.
Okay.
And so so he did a lot of, tabbing out the types of bluegrass tunes and gospel tunes that he played. He would tab out like a simple break, a melody, sort of in a shuffle pattern. Um, like quarter note eighth eighth da 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 da, that kind of vibe, and then he would sort of give me some options for making it more interesting. Like he started tapping out various patterns and licks, and sometimes he would tab out sort of an ornamented melody, and he did a really good job of actually kind of creating a blueprint for how one learns to improvise. But pretty quickly, by the time I was 9 or 10, he was no longer really my main teacher. Because I'd gotten pretty good already, and I started doing a lot of transcribing, and writing my own breaks, and so Tab. Yeah, so to answer your question, Tab was a part for the first, I want to say, year or two, but and maybe a little bit after that, learning fiddle tunes out of book. But I would say learning off the page, be it tab or notation, has never been the bulk of what I've done. And you know how it is, bluegrass musicians, at least good ones, usually their ears, develop, to the point where you can learn stuff by ear quicker than off of tab. So yeah. Anyway.
And growing up, I mean, it sounds like you said you were homeschooled and that you're trying to be like your dad wanted to make like a family band. But I'm guessing as a kid, you still are getting inspired by, touring musicians and records and stuff that kind of is more mainstream. Who were your mandolin heroes?
Yeah, my mandolin heroes then are largely the same as my mandolin heroes now. My first really truly huge hero, who's still a hero, is Ronnie McCoury. He was kind of the first player who's playing I was just obsessed with, and he also played in a band with his dad, so there's some
Yeah.
parallels there, but it still does, and he's still my favorite. But he was a huge hero, and I got to meet him when I was pretty young, and like a lot of bluegrass greats, they're relatively accessible, and like a fair amount of the ones I've met, really kind people too, and certainly he is that way and has always been really encouraging, and he's seen me kind of throughout lots of walks of my career already. Meeting him when I was a kid, and then like running into him when I was in Yonder Mountain and all that. But yeah, so Ronnie, probably the biggest one. But then at different points, the other big four for me were like Grisman. I met him also when I was quite young, and he was a huge influence. Thiele, undoubtedly, I think anyone post Thiele, he's got a huge, you can't buck that influence. Like he's just, he's set a new kind of gold standard for technique, and Also a very nice dude every time I've met him. So him, and then Sam, obviously Sam Bush, another huge hero. Also a great dude, and I've crossed paths with him a lot. And then I'd say the fifth is always Bill Monroe. I listened to a ton of Bill Monroe when I was young. So those five are kind of the ones I cite and have been the ones I've cited for my whole life, basically.
And I know you went to Berklee. When you went to Berklee, was there already like a built-in kind of bluegrass music program, or were you kind of the odd kid playing mandolin?
I would say it was sort of taking shape when I was there. I think my buddy Joe K. Walsh, a great mandolin player, when he went, I'd say it was, he was the odd kid playing mandolin because he was the first mandolin player to graduate from there, as far as I know. And I actually, of course, I met Joe when I was in high school at the Mandolin Symposium. And I remember corresponding with him as a high schooler. I wrote him just to ask about Berklee and ask about advice in that regard. So yeah, I think, but when I got there, a bunch of other great players got there right around the same time. My buddy Alex Hargraves, he got there a couple years later, but like Dominic Leslie, Serge Rose, Sierra Hull, all those people were in Boston when I was there, and a bunch of other great, just Wes Corbett, and he was in the band I would join shortly after getting to school. And yeah, so there was a real fantastic scene, coming on the heels kind of maybe of the like Crooked Still generation, which was a couple years older, but they had, there had been some really great bands already to come out of Boston. But then I feel like right around 2007, 2008, when I got there, just an insane amount of great players descended on that city. So it was a good time for sure.
How much of now I hear the Grisman influence like through all of your recordings, and we'll talk about those recordings in a bit, but like how much of your sound and vibe and sort of, take on bluegrass was formed at Berklee versus like before Berklee?
Oh, that's an interesting question. In a lot of ways, I feel like certain aesthetic things like harken back to before Berklee, just like I was talking about, like, Ronnie being a big influence, even though the music I play a lot of the time and my vocabulary is not really that similar to Ronnie anymore anyway. His whole kind of, on a deeper level, his whole demeanor when playing and his touch and just kind of effortless vibe when he plays, like that stuff is still stuff I attempt to channel and fall short for sure. And that stuff I feel like is even more integral. Like I was already kind of idolizing that way of playing as a youth, So, and then undoubtedly also my dad, his musical sensibilities. Like a lot of songs I play with my band are ones that I used to play with my dad. And I really like, his repertoire that he would gravitate towards tends to be things I still like. And then like you've mentioned, like Grisman, like I had met Grisman when I was maybe 11 or so. And my tune writing is certainly influenced by that. So, I mean, Berklee had a big influence, and sort of simultaneous with Berklee, it's when I joined my first real touring band, and that had a big influence. But I do think a lot of aspects of my style almost harken back to before I was even at Berklee, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And yeah, the band that you were in Berklee, Joy Kills Sorrow, like are you able to still go to school and like tour all over the place?
Yeah, I mean, I pushed the limits of it. I think someone that maybe if someone hadn't wanted to graduate and was looking for an excuse to drop out, probably the amount I was touring would have sufficed as a pretty good excuse to drop out. Like I remember I missed the first month of school because my senior year, because Joy Kills Sorrow was on tour in Europe. So I missed a lot of school, but, I mean, if you're going to try to make a living as a freelance musician, it's not like you can just graduate and then start that process on day one out of school. If you're hoping to make a living the second you get out, which most people are if they want to be performing musicians, then clearly you have to be laying the groundwork for like that said living, like while you're in school, you should be. And honestly, that was the fact that I didn't feel more sort of nervous about graduating college and entering the bluegrass workforce was because I was already so busy with the band. Like I didn't even sign a lease on an apartment for a couple years post Berklee because we were on tour like 250 days a year, and then I would just kind of get like a sublet or something in between. Or
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember what the question was, but
no, I mean, just like touring and going to school. I mean, do sometimes musicians struggle with, like a formal music school, program just because it seems kind of regimented. When you go to a place like Berklee and you're a bluegrass mandolin player, do you get a little more leeway to kind of like explore? Because you're playing not a guitar or piano or, any of the traditional stuff?
Yeah, in a lot of ways. I mean, it's one of those things where on the one hand, there's less players, so there's less competition on your instrument. On the other hand, they don't necessarily know what to do with you a lot of the time. And I think honestly, I was like a little too insecure about my like jazz playing and stuff at that time to take as much advantage of some of the great ensemble opportunities that I wish I would have now. Because, I've worked on playing jazz a lot in the last like 10 years. And kind of starting at Berklee, but I was like too insecure about my own playing to like put myself in some of the situations that would have been really beneficial. Also, sometimes they will like some of the jazz ensembles might not have known quite what to do with you. But I also like I studied with a really great mandolin player who's since passed away, but John McGann, he was the teacher out at Berklee, and he was such a great dude and an amazing teacher. And I think he cut me quite a lot of slack a lot of the time though, because he knew I was touring. He knew I was like a hard worker. So, he was just a really supportive dude, but I wouldn't say he necessarily like cracked the whip on me very much because he knew I was already like practicing all the time and stuff.
Sure.
Yeah.
So what comes after Berklee?
Well, yeah. So I did Joy Kills Sorrow, which is those of you who don't know, really, it was a good band, I have to say. Yeah. I mean, it was with Wes Corbett, who plays with Sam Bush now, and an amazing singer, Emma Beaton, who's from the Northwest actually as well. A great guitar player, Matt Arcaro, who's also a great guitar builder. My guess is he's had stuff in the Fretboard Journal before. Yeah. So he's a fantastic player and luthier of guitars and banjos. And then when I joined, Bridget Carney, who's an amazing bassist, bass player for Lake Street Dive. She was already in Lake Street Dive, but was also in Joy Kills Sorrow. And then when Lake Street Dive got super famous and she had to quit, then it was another great player, Zoe Giggano. So that was kind of the lineup of that band. And it was really, everyone was young and everyone was excited to be on the road. And so some of my fondest memories of touring are still that era because you're not really making any money and it's fairly dysfunctional touring on most levels. But, people not always getting along, like I said, no money, but it just also like the first time touring in Europe, first time touring at all. And just like some of the funnest times, and it's back when like you didn't care if you were just sleeping on a floor every night. Now I definitely do. So it was a great band and we toured until I was, 25.
Okay.
And then we broke up or went on, I like to say definite hiatus, and I think we played our last gig on May 1st and I had actually, the band, had already broken up and I had gotten the call from Yonder Mountain String Band, like within like a week of Joy Kills Sorrow playing our last gig. Because they were parting ways with their original mandolin player, Jeff Austin, and a couple of people recommended me. And so I was not long between gigs. I got the call from them to do some touring over the summer, and then that kind of coincided with also moving to New York, and then that was kind of the next phase.
You competed in the National Mandolin Championship, right? Is that a one-time year thing or more than once?
Yeah, I did Winfield, which is the National Mandolin Championship. I did it one time, and I only did one other mandolin competition, which was the Rocky Grass. And I was victorious on both accounts. So I figured that was a good time to retire from contests permanently.
Quit while you're ahead.
Exactly.
What was your repertoire? What did you do to win?
That's funny. I haven't been asked about that, maybe ever. But if I remember correctly, in high school when I did Rocky Grass, I played. Now, what the heck did I play? I played. I know. I played an original tune, which is a weird thing to do.
Yeah.
And I played Old French, which is like a lesser known fiddle tune. And I had a bunch of variations worked out. And then I would have played two other things, but I don't remember what they were. I have no memory. But then Winfield, which was a couple years later, that was, I think, 2012. I know I played Rebecca, the bluegrass tune.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a bunch of, like variations worked out. And I played an Irish tune that I can't remember what was called. I played the jazz tune Just Friends with like kind of, a lot of bebop vocabulary. And then I also played Old French again. I thought it was like my good luck charm, that one tune. So I had a whole different set of variations worked out than I played in high school. But I know I played that one tune in both contests. I'm so
fascinated by this world. And I know this was over a decade ago, but like, you go and presumably you figure out where you are in the order of performers, and then do you modify your arrangement based on like the level of playing you're seeing around you?
Well, I don't think so. I think everyone goes planning on playing their best stuff regardless. You know what I mean? Like, I would think modifying at the last minute is not going to be a recipe for success, but it's the contest culture to the degree that there is one for like mandolin and guitar. It's not one that I'm actually that well versed in. I kind of just dipped in for those two contests, and didn't. In a lot of ways, it's I don't have a problem with it, and I'm glad I did it because I got a couple good mandolins out of it. But I wasn't. I didn't. If you're. For me, like one good thing about it is that it's like a goal, you can like be working towards this thing.
Yeah.
And there's some pressure involved, but I guess, even then, but certainly since then, I've had enough sort of like other professional goals, just meaning like the repertoire of various, bands I'm playing with and albums I want to make, that those have sufficed as goals. And I don't have a problem with contests. Like there are some good things that come out of them, but I don't have any interest in like my playing evolving around what will win a contest. And in fact, I'm not sure that would be the best thing. So I was sort of happy to get in and get out, because I'm fairly sure that if I had lost, then the pride or obsession would have got the better of me and I would have gone back the next year. But luckily I was able to get in and get out, and then never to dip my foot back in it.
All right. I won't ask you too much more about competitions, but what mandolin did you end up winning, and do you still have it?
So it's interesting, actually. The Rocky Grass gives away, at least at the time, they gave away a Sam Bush model Gibson, which is a really nice mandolin, and very expensive in terms of the list price. And oddly, the one I was given by them was messed up, which was kind of frustrating. Like it needed a neck reset, and it wasn't the festival's fault. I mean, who knows whose fault it was? It might just be sort of like customer or quality control. But after a few months of sort of dealing with Gibson, they actually, their head of mandolins there, who was like, oh man, I'm messed up that this happened. I'll send you a really good one as soon as a good one comes along and replace it. And that's definitely what he did. And I can't remember if it was Danny Roberts or Dave Harvey, or anyhow, it was one of those heads of the mandolin, and he was super cool about it. And he sent me a really nice one. And then I didn't actually intend upon playing it because I liked what I had. I had a Rigel mandolin, which is a sort of real innovative design. They might be a company again. I know they were not a company for a good amount of years, but they might be back, but I can't say definitively on that. But so anyhow, the Gibson Sam Bush model was a really big departure sound wise from that, and playability setup wise too. But the one they sent me was really great, and I switched over to playing this Gibson, and then that was like I played it, for my pretty much my whole 20s, just hundreds of shows, thousands of hours. And when I went to Winfield, that's what I was playing, and I think I was given a Weber. But I was a broke young freelancing musician, so my intent was to sell whatever I got, for, needing the money. And that's what I did. Maybe if I were to win it now, I would like hang on to it for sentimental value or something. But I'm also not a big fan of having a ton of instruments that I'm not actually playing, because I feel like it'd be nicer to someone playing it. It's not just sitting under a bed. And I've always been kind of like a one mandolin at a time guy anyway. So I ended up selling the Weber, but it was a really beautiful instrument too. It was a Weber Fern. And I will say too, just you'd asked about the contest. It is a funny vibe, like there was a lot of mandolin players competing that year. There was like 35 or something like that. And I know it was in the 30s, and a lot of great players, and several people that would go on to win later. So it was a stiff year, and very intimidating. I remember being backstage at Winfield, just like everyone just like shredding their mind, their faces off. It was crazy. So I was super nervous, but like in both contests and a lot of gigs that are high pressure have been this way for me too, where like the first round, I was really nervous, like hands shaking level nervous. And then, when you make it to the second round, it's almost like there's a vote of confidence there already because they've pushed you into the next round. And I remember feeling like cool as a cucumber for the second round and actually abandoning some of my arrangement to improvise because I was just feeling good, So that's how both went. I was like super nervous and then relaxed in the second round. So, yeah.
Like the athlete you need to be to win a competition.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think there is that thing of like, I would assume athletes feel it, but I think a lot of musicians do, of like, even during nerve-wracking performances, like there's a moment where you're able to sort of drop into just like business as usual, which is kind of where you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
And then joining Yonder Mountain, I mean, that has to be a little bit of a change from the world of Berklee and certainly the world of like being in a family bluegrass gospel band, because the venues you're playing lean more towards, I would imagine, like the rock and roll jam band side of things than the bluegrass side of things. Am I correct?
Yeah, for sure. They played big rock clubs, and it was touring on a bus, it was definitely a whole other level of touring than I had done, and you hear about touring on a tour bus is sort of the like goal, for most musicians, to do at some point, or, and I think also it's the kind of thing that maybe used to be more accessible even to bands that weren't pretty famous, because just like maybe buses weren't as expensive, or gas, or people used to own their own buses. But now it's kind of like having a bus is so expensive that you gotta be doing pretty well to support having a bus. Anyhow, it was a whole different thing, playing plugged in ear monitors. And I remember like, getting called to that first tour, and then them sending me the list of dates, and it's, these like amphitheaters and, big spots. So like, yeah, it was a thrill, it was really fun. It was, and I had been, aware of them. I think, everyone was. I mean, even as a kid, I was like hearing about them because they were kind of the like Billy Strings of the time,
Yeah.
In terms of being like the most famous sort of like touring bluegrass band, or certainly one of them. But we had never crossed paths, which was odd. It's sort of the bluegrass scene and the jam band bluegrass scene can be pretty different in terms of festivals. So, like I had never seen them before. My first time hearing them was like live, was being on stage with them. So, which is wild, but, it was great. They're really nice guys. And when I joined, also a really great fiddler, Allie Crawl, she joined, and she would become a really good friend of mine. And yeah, it was super fun, and then, after a few years, it became less fun, not for anything anyone was doing, but just it wasn't as good of a fit for me musically. Um, and, and so we parted ways at the end of 2019. And, I was already doing my own band, and there was just, I think everyone's in a better place now in terms of they got a great mandolin player to take over for me, and I'm actually kind of the kind of musician that likes to sort of be in control of their whole schedule. Like, I don't like being tied up with one band, because I like to be doing a million things at once. I don't like to have to turn down cool stuff. And so, yeah, but I have the fondest of memories of touring with them, though. Like, great dudes and some hilarious times, lots of shenanigans on the bus. And yeah, it was a good time.
And I have to imagine for those few years that you were in that band, like, that must be like a completely different touch and approach to mandolin than what you were doing before and now what you're doing now, right? Like, maybe? or
in some ways, and for some people, maybe they would have adopted a different thing going to, and part of the reason I wasn't necessarily a great fit at a certain point in the band was too, like, I'm not real like emotive in an obvious way on stage. Like, I don't, obviously there are a lot of musicians who, like, well, for one, like Thiele, he's fun to watch play, not just because he's amazing, but like he's really emotive in his body language. And I'm just like, that's just not me at all. Like, I'm kind of like a statue when I play.
Mhm.
And so that was sort of an odd fit. But in a lot of, for that scene, but in a lot of other ways, my skill set translated well. Like, they play really fast and they take really long solos, and I had a lot to say in terms of, like, I don't mind taking a 5-minute mandolin solo, and like, while in some ways, like, musically it wasn't a great fit after a while, like, they definitely, like, give you free reign. Like, no one in the band was ever like, don't like superimpose your bebop vocabulary over the solo, or they were all like gung-ho for that kind of stuff. So it was a really good fit in that way, because it was just like blank slate, like, take a 5-minute solo over this fast groove in D, at a bajillion decibels. So, I mean, that was pretty fun for me, and in that way, it was a good fit. But in terms of a different approach on the mandolin, I mean, it's like, yeah, a little bit maybe different touch just because you're plugged in. But, even playing big places, even playing with in-ear monitors, you sort of fall prey to the same things you do, like playing with, when I play with my group, we play around one mic, no monitors. But that's, say, like, some nights you're playing a little too hard. Some nights you can't hear yourself that well. And it's kind of just like, I've never found that to go away. There just being sort of some variety from night to night in that way. So, yeah.
When you started the Jacob Jolliff Band, which I want to hear all about, like, was that one mic thing part of, like, the crucial elements to the formula?
Yeah, I think I always really idolized, I like the old school look of it, not even just in terms of, like, the mic itself, but just of moving around the mic. And it's, that aspect can be good for me too, because, like I said, as a performer, I don't move much, and it kind of forces me to move a little bit more. Yeah, so when we started, we were using the one mic and like a DI on the bass. And we did go through a brief phase of, like, plugging in when we played, like, louder types of rock clubs and late nights at festivals. But I gave up on that, like, maybe it was even like 5 years ago now. I just hate plugging in unless I absolutely have to. Because, you spend so much time developing your, like, acoustic sound and an ability to pull tone, and then it just all goes out down the drain when you plug in, and it's a lot of times outside of your control. So I just, like, for me, it just wasn't worth it to plug in anymore, and I'd rather just not book gigs at those venues where I have to. And now I'm really glad I did that, because now it's like my band, we just did 15 shows in like 17 days, and we really, there's a couple nights where the guys said that they were having trouble hearing, but I honestly felt like we had good sound every night. Like it, and certainly like on average, the sound was great in terms of just everyone being able to hear. So once you get used to just hearing yourself in the house and acoustically, and not relying on this like wedge screaming in your face, there's a certain consistency there. And I feel like at this point, I love playing that way. So yeah, it's pretty integral at this point, I would say.
Yeah. And you guys are playing, Will, or is May you're touring, is that with the band?
Well, yeah, so we just did a run that was started in Florida and went the whole way up to Maine. So it was far reaching. And then we're off the road and I'm doing some other things. And then we start up again in May and we're actually playing Mountain Stage, which is a really fun radio program in West Virginia that a lot of great bands play. So yeah, we start up in May and then we got some gigs in May and June and August and September. And then we have quite a few gigs also in the fall in like October and stuff. So yeah, I mean, it's not like a ton like by like the standard of some of the other bands I've been in, but it's like we did maybe 60 gigs last year and we'll probably do like 50 this year. But I've got like a lot of other kind of projects that I also pursue. So it feels like a pretty good chunk, and especially when you're the one booking all the gigs and logistics and driving the van and fronting the band, it definitely feels like a lot then, you know?
Oh, I bet. Yeah. I didn't even realize it. What is the one microphone? If you're depending on one thing to like forge your sound, like what mic do you guys use?
Yeah, so it's the Audio-Technica 4033, which is a pretty standard mic for that kind of thing. It's the one that like Dell used to play through. Like, I don't know, I think it's like when Dell first switched over to using one mic again, because obviously, you know, there was a point which most bluegrass bands were using all satellite mics. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't know if that was like 80s, 90s, because obviously the old school would have been maybe something like one mic, you know, Bill Monroe era, like way back in the day. But you know, then they all went to satellite mics, and then Dell was one of the first bands to switch back over to just a one mic, and that was the one he was using. And so, you know, I there's a nostalgia of seeing Dell play through that mic, but I love the 4033, and I get like nothing but compliments from engineers across the spectrum. And it's not a super expensive mic. It's maybe like a $400 mic, but you know, I think it sounds good on the mandolin, and I'm real used to it at this point. But I feel like we've had it sounding really good, you know. So I'm a fan. And then we have a line on the bass, and then we do have a guitar solo mic over stage to the left because it's just a little too hard to get the guitar solos up through the one mic. But so it's just those 3 lines total, though.
That's
no monitors.
Simplicity at its finest.
Yeah. Yep.
What mandolin are you playing these days?
Yeah, it's a Gilchrist from 2017 that Stephen Gilchrist built for me. It's X-braced. And then I have like a block when it comes to remembering like what woods mandolins are made of. I'm not like a gearhead, if that makes sense. Like I'm kind of just like play the mandolin I have, and it happens to be a really great one. But like I can't ever remember what woods mandolins are made out of. Even I get told a million times what it is, I still forget. So, yeah, it's a really great mandolin. I basically never play mandolins that I like better or as well as it. And I compared it to a lot of things, and I'm not saying it's better than all of them, but just for what I like and how it fits my sound, like. And it's also insanely loud, which kind of always helps too. So I'm a big fan of that mandolin. I'm lucky to have it for sure.
Do you remember back now 8 years ago, 9 years ago, like what you asked him to build you, or what was like what were the traits you were hoping for?
Well, basically, he built me 2 mandolins, which is something that. Yeah, I mean, he offered to build me 2 and just said that he would sell the other one to somebody else, because that Gilchrist tend to fly off the shelf. So he wasn't worried about that, but still very generous of him to offer. So he built me one that was like a tone bar kind of lore copy. And then he built me one that was basically a copy of Ronnie's, like Ronnie's that he got from Dog, that he plays on a lot of my favorite, Del McCoury Band records. And, like I said, Ronnie's like my hero. And actually Ronnie had told Gilchrist that I was looking for a mandolin, and he was kind of instrumental in me getting a Gilchrist. So anyhow, he built these two with the understanding that, I'd, pick one of the two. And so I flew down to Nashville when Gilchrist flew over from Australia with his shipment of mandolins to like set them up at Carter Vintage. And I just played those two for like a few days to decide. But honestly, it's funny. I played the tone bar one first, the lore copy, and it was like, oh man, this is amazing. Like, this is a great mandolin. Probably in some ways more similar to the Sam Bush Gibson I'd been playing because it's tone bar. And then I played the X-Brace one that I ended up buying. And for the first 30 seconds, I was like, I don't know about this. Like, this is a different vibe. I'm not sure if I like it. And then after about 30 seconds, I still remember the moment. I was like, oh no, holy shit, holy smokes, this mandolin is incredible. So I basically knew after about 30 seconds I was getting that one. But I still went and played them for a few days because the other mandolin was fantastic too. But I think just having played so much on a tone bar mandolin, there was an excitement to the new sound of the X-Brace instrument. And so I knew pretty quick that's the one I was, when she walked through the door, I knew awesome. She was the one, Yeah, and and then it's just got, I'd wager it's been played more than any Gilchrist built that year. I would put money on that because it's the amount I play and the gigs, rehearsals, practicing is pretty insane. It looks like a mandolin that's had a hard, 8 years just in terms of, I'm not careless with it, but it just gets so much wear and tear through playing, so it's really played in.
That's so cool. You played with Bela Fleck on the My Bluegrass Heart tour. You've got the two instrumentals records that everyone should go check out. They're just totally beautiful. Like what else is on the horizon for 2025 and 2026?
Oh yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate the kind words. I love to make albums. I would make more especially if they still made money, which they basically don't. But I've got some different albums coming out. I play with this quartet called Ezra, which is banjo, guitar, bass, mandolin. And a kind of interesting group. It features a really great young banjo player, Max Allard, who just graduated from Oberlin, and then it features Professor Jesse Jones, who's an amazing musician, composition professor there. He plays guitar in the group, and then a fantastic bass player, Craig Butterfield. And it's music kind of, somewhat in the vein of my band, though it's all instrumental. Definitely in the sort of like Bela Edgar type of vein. So we're putting out our third album like really soon, and we have another one recorded. So it's a band that doesn't really play gigs; it just incessantly makes albums.
Okay.
But it's all original music. So there's a bunch of Ezra records that maybe people could check out, and then so this guy Jesse Jones, who plays guitar in that band, he's like I said, he's a pretty big deal in the composition world. He's won a ton of huge awards and professor at Oberlin. He is also a mandolin player in addition to guitar and composition, and he wrote a mandolin concerto for me to play with the Sinfonietta at Oberlin, which I performed it with them almost a year ago, and then we recorded it in January. And actually this morning I was working on editing it. So there'll be an album at some point in the next year or so of this mandolin concerto, which is a 5-movement piece. It's about 25 minutes long with Sinfonietta. It's like a 15-piece orchestra. And it's a really amazing piece that Jesse does an amazing job of merging like mandolin fiddle tune bluegrass, like new acoustic type of world, which he's totally aware of, and has studied all those players with like modern classical. And I think he merges them in a super effective way that I don't think has ever been done, because he's so grounded in both. He's not like half-assing it in either one. And so, that's going to be on an album with a couple other shorter mandolin pieces of Jesse's that I'm going to record. So there's that. And I got a bunch of different projects. Amazing bluegrass legend Michael Daves, who I was playing at Wintergrass with. We tour. Well, we don't really tour. We fly in and play festivals and stuff like that. But we have a project, and we have an album recorded of all Jim and Jesse brother duet stuff, tribute to the great duo Jim and Jesse. Sort of in zany New York bluegrass fashion. But so that's in the can, though. Not sure yet when it's coming out, but we play. It's amazing to get to play with Michael and sing with Michael. He's a true kind of force of nature and national treasure, I'd say. So those things, and then a bunch of other random. I've got some other recording projects in the works, though, but I maybe not far enough along to talk about. What I would love to do is get to perform this concerto of Jesse's again, which is always tough to find, like a classical group of some sort that wants to program it. But that's a major goal, is to get to do that some more. But I also play a lot of jazz, so I've got a few jazz albums out, and I'm always trying to get better at that, and would like to make some more albums in that, or just do more playing in that realm too. But anyway, that's a few things I'm up to.
Is the concerto a situation where, as with like a piano concerto, if there was an orchestra you could work with, like you could bounce around from town to town, and you'd be up front playing mandolin, but the rest of the band would just be following along with the music?
That's the goal. Like the thing is just like, I don't know the world at all, but by all accounts, it's just hard to get stuff programmed and super competitive. And I do think that Jesse's piece is really unique and also really fun to listen to. Who knows? Once we get the recording all edited and mixed, and we're going to do our best to kind of shop it around. So if there's any people that program works for orchestra out there listening, maybe consider it. So I mean, the goal, I would do it as much as I could, but I would just be happy to do it one more time for that matter, because the whole thing is memorized. So it's like I would love to get to go out and play it, because it's just like 25 minutes of mandolin craziness that's all memorized, and I want to be able to go give it another swing.
All memorized because you didn't want someone to have to change the score, like change the page of the score, or that's just how you roll?
No, well, it's kind of just how I roll, but also like, my sight reading is okay, but the stuff is pretty like fast, and there's a lot of crazy stuff in it. It's like, I don't think having the music up there would have done me any good anyway. It's like for me at least, way too hard. And also to be reading it, and my trust in my memory is probably better than my trust in my sight reading anyway. Cause, it was really difficult, and the difficult bits are actually kind of like, you might play crazy passages of notes for like 45 seconds straight, but that's actually easy for me to remember relative to then there's like 2.5 bars of rest, and then you play like 4 notes, and then there's 3 bars of rest, and you play 6 notes, and then there's 6 bars of rest, and then you come back in with 4 bars of playing. That kind of stuff is where it gets hairy and hard to remember. But when I was learning it, I kind of just tried to relate it to like my own repertoire with my band, or learning the repertoire to play with Bela, where it's like, in my head, I sort of divided it up into tunes, even when it wasn't divided that way on the page, and sort of just took it bit at a time, and that's what made the task of memorizing it seem more approachable. It's like, oh, I've learned whole repertoires of tunes. I just need to think of this one piece as like a whole repertoire of music,
Mhm.
So yeah, anyway.
What has playing with Michael, Dave, the other Jesse in your life, Jim and Jesse, like what has playing with Michael, who's such a scholar? I mean, I don't know that the world knows just how deep he goes in terms of like, not only the technique but the history of bluegrass. Like, has that changed your playing at all, trying to play those Jim and Jesse tunes?
Yeah, I mean, playing the Jim and Jesse stuff and just playing with him in general. I mean, I think especially like living up north, it's nice getting to play with someone that's that good who also like comes from, he's from Atlanta and has sort of a direct line to more southern bluegrass and singing and playing. It's rare up north, even though there's a lot of great players. There's a certain traditional, legitimacy and like to his sound that it's really nice to get to be around that. And it's a really fun contrast to play with him and then play with my band because it's very different, but yeah, like you say, he's a total scholar. Like he knows lots of old tunes, but also has like transcribed an insane amount, like because he's been teaching like a ridiculous amount of students for like 20-25 years and has transcribed a ton of stuff for his lessons. So he has like an insane archive of transcribed bluegrass vocally and on the guitar and all this. So yeah, like you say, he's a real scholar and it's cool to be around, but he's also not like, when it comes to actually playing and improvising, he also studied like jazz arranging in college and he's got that whole side to his vocabulary too. And sort of fearlessness and willingness to mix the two, and so we can kind of relate on that level too. So because I think we both love traditional bluegrass and both played it from a pretty young age, but then both have a lot of other training and other vocabulary. So it's a fun dynamic for sure.
Yeah, I want to see. One day we'll get you guys to do that at the Fretboard Summit we do in Chicago because it'd be super fun.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
Yeah. I think you're going to, looking at your tour schedule, I think you're going to Italy right when the summit takes place this year. So I won't.
Oh, too bad.
Yeah.
Is that, what do you guys do? Is that at the Old Town School of Folk Music or is that somewhere else?
No, it's right at Old Town School of Folk Music. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, I'm actually playing there with my band next month. The first time I've ever played there, so I'm excited to check it out. But yeah, maybe the summit would work out a different year. That sounds like a blast.
Yeah, we'd love that. It would be super fun.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, Jacob, thank you. I hope this is the first of many interviews we do, and I want to hear about all these forthcoming projects that we haven't even covered yet. But your music is just amazing, and I love getting to briefly meet you at Wintergrass and share your story.
Absolutely, man. Jason, thank you so much for having me, man. It was a pleasure.
All right, that was my conversation with Jacob Jolliff. I hope you enjoyed it. I have some video I shot of Jacob at Wintergrass. I need to post it. I will try to do that ASAP. Thanks as always for tuning in. Thanks for all the feedback to podcast@fretboardjournal.com. And I can't wait to share another episode with you next weekend.